welcome back to another episode of This Week's Stoke. I'm super excited to be focusing on off-season training as we're kind of deep in the summer right now. A lot of ski racers really try and think that all of their work is happening on the snow, but that's not always the case. A lot of the time, the biggest gains are what you make in the gym. So for this summer series, we're really going to hone in on a couple of different ways that you can really make sure that you're taking advantage of your off-season training. So today, I'm really excited because we're going to continue on this progression and really hone in with somebody who has so much knowledge about strength and conditioning. And so I'm really excited to welcome Agneta Platter to our show today to be able to talk to us about her experience in strength and conditioning and also go through a couple of questions that I've kind of planned out for her to share with you guys. And so just a little background so you have some awareness. Agneta was a strength and conditioning coach. She kind of started coaching her sister, but then really started coaching in 1992 after she graduated and was part of the Swedish Women's World Cup team where she was teaching and coaching Pernilla Wiberg when she won gold medal. So that's a pretty cool one. And then also was able to work with the Canadian men's speed team. So that's also pretty sweet. And then now is in Austria and she's working with all of the speed men and women in Innsbruck as she's kind of working with them to make sure that they're ready for the upcoming season. So Agneta, thank you so much for coming on today. And I'm really excited to be able to share some of your knowledge with the ski community.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Yeah. And so as we kind of get started, I tried to hit on a couple of the points, but I think really talking about a little bit of your background will be really great to set the stage for our community. So if you could go into a little bit about how you started and how you've gotten to where you are now coaching in Innsbruck and just how you've gotten into strength and conditioning, I think that'll be really neat to share.
So I have a background as a ski racer. I wasn't very successful, but I was FIS racing. I was a ski racer. And then like you said before, I was coaching my sister because she didn't have a good ski coach and she was better than I was. So that is how it all started. And then I went to university, Sports University of Stockholm. And at that time, I was already working for the Swedish Ski Federation. And I did then the preparations for the 92 Olympic Games, and that was pretty successful with the strength and conditioning preparations. And Pernilla got a gold medal in Albertville. So yeah, so that is how it started. And then I never got out of the circuit, actually. So I've been trying a few times, but I somehow stay in there. So that's how I got into the World Cup circuit. But then 97 and 2000, I have two sons, one born 97 and 2000. Then I started to stay more at home and I worked in a sports academy in our village in northern Italy called Mals. And there I was responsible for the regional team. And then I also stayed in the contact with the World Cup circuit because that was Christoph Innerhofer, Dominique Paris, and I all had them 6 years in school and did all the preparations for them when they were young. Wow. And yeah, so I was trying to stay in the business, but still being a good mom, traveling just a little bit. I was also responsible for Isolde Kostner. And so I traveled with her a bit at that time in the World Cup circuit. Yeah, and then, working with this Elisabeth Gergel on a special project from the Austrian ski team. And the Swedish ski team with the speed team for a while with the men's team. And then I got an offer from the Canadian team, Canadian speed team. And I said, yes, like that was kind of the coolest thing as a woman to be strength and conditioning coach for men's speed team. So that was just, I didn't think for a long time. I just said, yes, I'll do it.
Super cool. And I think like your background has really taken you all over the strength and conditioning field, right? You've worked with a bunch of different teams, you've worked with different events, and you've been able to work with men and women as well. So I think that that's really neat as you've kind of developed this insight to how to prepare ski racers to find the most success. So kind of dumping into like the nitty gritty part of our interview, the really like cool part is going to be talking about the importance of strength and conditioning in the off season. So I think diving right in, we're going to talk about this time of year, right? We're in the middle of the summer. Not a lot of kids are getting on snow. What do you think the most important part of your strength and conditioning right away is? Is it building a base from the past season? Is it focusing on certain pieces of your strength and conditioning? Or is it kind of just the overall full spectrum of just getting stronger and faster?
I think it's really important that you work on your gaps. So you should kind of have do some basics tests. You can do them at home. You can jump into a square and look that you jump the same amount of jumps in that little square left and right. So you don't have gaps and deficits left, right, and just some simple chins or whatever to see like, yeah, this is my gaps. I don't have a good endurance. I don't have that, and I don't have that. Or this is my strength, and yeah, you can do some of your strengths as well, but to see that your whole body has a balance and then you're trying to stay healthy. It's not that you don't need to be the best on anything. You just need to be able to do a little bit of everything. That's really important. Because there is some science, there are a lot of science, like the people that jump the highest jumps, they are not the healthiest people maybe. So that like, you don't need to be the fastest when you run. You don't need to jump the highest from everyone. You just need to stay in that middle in everything. And that is the way to stay healthy and to be good in the sports.
Okay, so you're trying to be really well-rounded is what it
Yes.
sounds like. And
Yeah.
so with that, I think the timing of training makes a lot of sense. I've heard a lot of different coaches talk about like periodization. So are you getting to work with your athletes back and forth in the gym on the snow throughout the summer, or do you work with them in the gym for like a month at a time and get them really strong and then work with them on the snow? Do you have any sort of like timing keys?
So that's very, very different. It's depending on which one you're working with, because in the end, it's mostly the ski coaches that's deciding how much time you get to do the dryland. So this is the first time since a long time that I get this 8 to 10 weeks to prepare the ski racers. And that's a wow for me as a strength and conditioning coach, because then you really can change something. Yeah. For a long time in Sweden, I got 2 weeks and then 10 days of skiing and then 2 weeks again. So then you rest from the ski camp and then you prepare for the next time. And then in the end, you have 6 days of good training. And that's not how you could close your gaps and how you could change something. You could stay all around and you can stay okay. But if you really want to change something, you need 8 to 10 weeks. And that's the time that the dryland coaches mostly don't get. And I got it this year, so I'm really happy.
That's huge. But thinking about 8 to 10 weeks, that makes these like summer months so crucial. So for you, does it make sense for timing with your athletes that the second the season's over, do they rush right into their 8 to 10 weeks, or do you try and prioritize some rest and recovery as well?
So that's a big difference from different teams. So it's depending on when they make it official, if they're on the teams or not. Okay. And for example, in Canada, it took forever until the teams were done. And then that doesn't have a long time to work with the team that you're going to have for the winter. But in Austria, they're pretty early. And then you end the season, you do your testing, you can see where the gaps is, and then you make a plan. This is when you're going to go on vacation. This is when we're going to have the camps together, and it's way easier. So you need to be one step ahead to do a good job. Yeah. And it helps if the organization works.
No, that's super interesting. So basically, it's like everybody needs to be rowing in the same direction. It's like, get the team picked. Let's get the plan in place, then we can start training, then we can be successful. So I like how you can be one step ahead and just planning for that upcoming season.
But then if you're on a lower level, that is harder, because you make your national team, and then you make the regional teams, and then you make the university. It's all like taking longer and longer. It gets later and later. So I do get it. It's a problem, but you should try to be one step ahead.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, kind of going back to your experience in all of the different teams that you've coached, I'm curious, when you're working with tech teams and speed teams and women's teams and men's teams, do you have different programming styles, or do you try and keep them really similar?
No, like every person is different. Yeah. And you have to get to look where every person is. And I coached in Canada, I coached old men with kids at home. And I also had some young boys just getting out of high school. So you have to look at the whole picture. Who are you coaching? What is their family situation? What is their situation? How much time do they have? And are they healthy? So my biggest thing that I put on first is take the athlete to their next level and don't copy anyone else. So how do I make whoever, I don't want to name drop, but you look at the situation and he's here. And I've had some downhillers, they weren't really the best in strength and conditioning, but how do I make him put him to the next level? How do I do that? I don't want to compare him with Kilde, who is good in everything, because that's not going to help me. So how do I do this? And that has helped me a lot, to just evaluate every single person and take that person to the next level and stop comparing.
I love that so much, because you're talking about completely different people. They may be on a team, but different body types, different training ability. I think it's really cool that you take the time to go through individualized plans. So that's really special. So then with that, we kind of get to talk a little bit about your success. You've had a very successful strength and conditioning career. We're talking about working with gold medalists, working with different Olympians, stuff like that. Do you take every year and kind of think back on how that year went? Do you learn from some of those successes? Do you try and repeat to see if that works for the next person? Or do you teach each team, each person, new year, fresh start every time?
I'm trying to do a little bit of both. It's not a good answer. I'm trying to do the good things, and it also helps. And we did something before the World Championships in St. Moritz. I was talking to the boys. I had some really good experience on doing some aerob training just in the middle of the season, because in a week with World Championships is 2 weeks with a lot of racing and a lot of training. So to be prepared, instead of just lifting, and then as you put your whole system on another level. So that's what we did. We did that 2 weeks before, and we focus on the aerob part of the training. And when you can tell them that, okay, that worked for that person, and then it's just like, oh, it worked for her, it's going to work for me as well. So we were kind of coming in laughing to that World Championships. Very different, special feeling. And taking, it's so many, when everything comes on the right place, and you make, so they got first and followed, amazing championships. But that is not it's not easy to answer that question, but I do take some old experience, but it's also everything, material changes, and the program changes. There's a lot of changing, but a little bit of mix of both. Yes.
Yeah, no, totally. And then do you also feel like an amazing moment in your heart when you do have an athlete that succeeds? Like if you think about going back to the start of your career with Pernilla, like that's a gold medal. Is that like one of the coolest things and one of the coolest athletes you've worked with? Or just because you've had such an expansive career with such successful athletes that everyone is special?
Everyone is very special. And I have met so many nice people during that time. For me, Pernilla was very special, because we were a very small team and we were traveling together, and we were mostly roommates. So it was kind of 250 days a year together. Now she's my best friend now. Yeah. So like we talked about everything. So that was a very special part. And she was a special part of my life as well. But yes, we had a great time. But I didn't know her very well, so it was easy to coach her in that case. Yeah,
that's super cool. Okay, now we'll jump back to more the ski community as a whole. I think really tapping into your knowledge and kind of giving some advice for training for younger athletes will be really neat. And so I kind of want to talk to you about I think we can narrow it down to 3, either exercises or focuses for training that'll help athletes be most prepared for when they can finally get on snow, whether or not it is in the summer, if they're a little bit of a higher level or older age, or if they're really getting an entire summer to fall to get ready in the winter.
So it's depending on the age of the athletes, if they could lift or not. Yep. So if they're not lifting, there is some easy just to work on the single leg squats. It's really, really important. And also just how functional the body is working, if you do the frog jumps or whatever, left and right, and just also be aware of the differences and the balances in the body. That is, so it's hard to tell an exercise, but when they start lifting, I start with single leg squats, and then I do front squats, because I do love the front squatting, because then you have to have the strength in your whole body to be able to hold the weight in front. I don't like to put the weights on the back for younger athletes. So that's how, because for me, the health is very, very important. I want the kids that they can look me in my eyes, 40 or whatever, and they're going to be fine. I don't want to put 150 kilos, 300 pounds on their backs, and then with 30, they can't move. So that is, yeah,
A balance.
It's not worth it.
Yeah. So that's cool. It's really kind of focusing, just so everybody gets it, when you're young and kind of working on just your athleticism, focusing on single leg squats, getting that balance really centered, having control on both sides, and probably equal for squats on both your left and right was probably important. And then as you get older, front squats to help with loading your whole body. And then of course the single leg squats as well. What about moving to more of a off-season cardio focus? Do you think that that's super important for ski racers, or do you think more of that strength and agility and speed work is more important?
I think it's really important to be in good shape so you can handle the training, to work on that altitude that Zermatt and Sasfea, and where the summer training and the glacier training is, and also to be able to do many runs. But that's also science things, because you work on the aerobic capacity when you do a lot of runs on that altitude, so you could take that one back and forth. But for me, I always have a focus on the aerobic part, yes. But I do very basic aerobic training, or do high intensity training. I don't do a lot in that mixed zone. Okay. I don't, because you have a certain amount of hours and days and weeks, and then you have to prioritize, and that's my way of doing the priorities. How do you say priorities? Sorry. and yeah, but everyone's different, but that's how I'm thinking when I do the programming.
No, super cool. It's just having that aerobic and anaerobic focus, and I think that is key. If you can take more laps, that's more time on snow, so that should help you make gains. So, Agneta, I am so grateful for your time today. I think we covered a lot of ground, and definitely ways that kids can really focus in on making improvements this summer and taking advantage of how they can make gains for themselves so they're ready to hit snow this upcoming season. So I can't thank you enough for your time, and I really appreciate it. And to everybody listening, this is your key. Hit the gym. Let's see some single leg squats. And I think we'll all be excited to see everybody on the snow as soon as they can get there. So thank you again for your time, and I'll catch you all later.
Thank you.